The day I was diagnosed with cancer, my nemesis got into a car crash and lost his memory. I went to see him, fully intending to kick him while he was down. He smiled weakly at me and asked, "I'm sorry, I have amnesia. Who are you?" Before I could say a word, rows of comments suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. "Oh, you gotta admit, the guy's a pretty convincing actor. What can you do? He screwed up so many times before. This is the only way he can get his man." Seeing this, I had a sudden change of heart. I crossed my arms and said casually, "Actually, I'm your boyfriend." I was still trying to process the cancer diagnosis I just received when Alex called to tell me that James had been in a car accident and had amnesia. As shocking as the diagnosis was, the chance to laugh at my rival was a rare opportunity one couldn't pass up. When I got to James's hospital room, he was alone. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and innocent. "I'm sorry, I was in an accident and lost my memory. Who are you?" He didn't seem to be faking. His head was wrapped in bandages, and his arms were covered in scrapes. Lying there half propped up in bed, looking pale, he was the very picture of pitiable. But all I wanted to do was kick him while he was down and then laugh in his face. Before I could open my mouth, a few lines of text floated past my eyes. "Oh, you gotta admit, the guy's a pretty convincing actor. Well, what choice does he have? He meant well but kept messing things up, getting on his honey's bad side. Now he has to fake amnesia to win him over." Reading the comments, I fell into a deep thought. Wait, are they saying James likes me? That's insane. What kind of joke is this? No, more importantly, this asshole is faking his amnesia. I narrowed my eyes. Perfect. I slowly walked over to his bed and looked down at him. "You really don't recognize me?" He frowned, pretending to think hard, then flashed a sincere, apologetic smile. "You look a little familiar. We must be really good friends, right? Keep acting, just keep acting. Look at that expression, that look in his eyes. You deserve an Oscar for that performance." "Haha. Good friends? My ass. You're his one and only enemy right now. I'll just make stuff up, say whatever it takes, and hope my honey forgives me. This guy will say anything to get his man. Jesus Christ." I almost laughed out of sheer annoyance. James and I were sworn enemies. Our relationship was like fire and water, the kind where we'd feel off if we didn't get into a fight at least once a month. But he could never win against me, so he was always the one walking away with a bruised face. Fine. If the comments said James liked me, I'd play along, not that I actually believed it. What's that saying? Beat them at their own game. I was curious to see what he was plotting. I let out a sneer, sat down on the edge of his bed, and crossed my legs. Actually, our relationship isn't as simple as you think. James's eyes flickered. But it's obvious we're close. You came to visit me, didn't you? I shot him a cool glance. Don't get ahead of yourself. Is our relationship that important to you? It is, he said, his fingers lightly brushing against my arm when I wasn't looking. Just seeing you makes me happy. Shit. I yanked my arm back like I'd been zapped, the hair on my arm standing on end. That son of a bitch was definitely doing it on purpose. "James," I said through gritted teeth, a cold smile on my face, "did losing your memory make you even more disgusting?" He tilted his head and blinked innocently. "But I feel so at ease when I touch you. I can't control it." I scoffed. "What if I told you we were mortal enemies who fought on sight? Would you still feel at ease? Then I must have done something to upset you." "It's all my fault," he replied obediently. "You really do laugh when you're utterly speechless. Our relationship can't be that bad, can it?" James asked, looking at me uneasily, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. I sneered inwardly. "You're right, it's not that bad." After I said that, he secretly let out a sigh of relief. Then, I crossed my arms and said casually, "All right, I'll tell you the truth. I'm actually..." Under his expectant gaze, I said one word at a time, "Your boyfriend." The air froze for a second. James's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and then to a hint of barely concealed ecstasy. The tips of his ears turned red, a change so obvious you could see it from across the room, and he couldn't hold back the smile creeping onto his face. So that's how it is. No wonder my heart started racing the moment I saw you. I just stared at him. This asshole was really committed to the role. Before sophomore year of high school, James and I hadn't really crossed paths. But as it happened, our grades were always neck and neck. He just always had a bit more luck, his total score always a few points higher than mine, leaving me perpetually stuck in second place. Before the sophomore year midterms, I got it in my head that this time I would definitely get first place. So I locked myself in the library for 2 solid weeks. The day the results came out, I stared at my name at the top of the list for the first time and immediately started gloating. But before I could celebrate for long, a rumor started spreading like wildfire through the entire grade. Did you hear? James threw the test on purpose this time. He'd apparently said it himself. First place is no big deal. I just let him have it for fun. When I furiously tracked him down, he was in the middle of an argument with someone else, his brow furrowed as he spoke. I didn't care about any of that. I grabbed him by the collar. You think you're so great, don't you? He was clearly stunned. What? Just looking at him made me angry. I threw a punch right at his face. The next thing I remember, his lip was bleeding, and my right leg was trembling from the pain of his kick. But I stubbornly leaned against the wall, refusing to fall. I glared at him, panting. Being number 1 doesn't make you hot shit. Don't let me see you again, or I'll beat you up every single time. He wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand and gave me a cold look. You're the one who got first place? He shouldn't have brought it up. The mention of first place set me off. Who the hell do you think you are? Looking down on people like that. Let me tell you, I don't need anyone to let me be number 1. Finally, he snapped, you're a complete psycho, and walked off without another word. And that's how our feud began. Since you're my boyfriend, we must be living together, right? James's words pulled me back to the present. The doctor said my injuries aren't serious and I can be discharged today. Let's go home together. Wait, isn't he taking this a little too far? But then I thought about my own test results. I didn't have much time left anyway. If I could spend my last days messing with him, I'd die with no regrets. So I nodded along. We do live together, it's just what? James asked, tilting his head innocently. It's just, why isn't any of my stuff here, honey? After we got to my place, James did a dramatic tour of the apartment before turning to me with a pitiful look. First of all, I couldn't stop him. The moment we got in the car, he started calling me honey so naturally, you'd think it was real. Second, he was laying it on so thick. We went to the same high school and the same college. He was always the aloof, cool type who kept to himself and spoke in short, clipped sentences. The last time we fought, I yelled at him for 10 minutes straight, and all he did was frown and mutter, shut up. So why was he so chatty and dramatic now? Honey, is this my toothbrush? It doesn't really feel like my style, he asked, holding up a toothbrush he'd found somewhere. I glanced at it. Oh, a friend of mine stayed over yesterday and left it. Is that a problem? His expression turned wounded. He squeezed in next to me on the couch and whined, honey, I'm jealous. There's not a single thing of mine here, but there's stuff from another man. Is that right? Honey, are you falling for someone else? I know I'm not handsome enough, and my personality isn't great, and I probably always make you mad. I stared at his face, a face so handsome it even made me a little jealous, and cut him off. What is it you really want to say? His eyes lit up and he leaned in close. Honey, I want to sleep in the same bed with you tonight. Can I? In his dreams. I pushed him away, crossed my arms, and sneered, my words sharp and challenging. You wanted to know how good our relationship was, right? Well, now you see. We were in the middle of a fight before your accident. I threw all your stuff out, and you still want to sleep with me? Go on, keep acting. If you're going to act, so will I. Let's see who can annoy who more. Honey, I'm sorry. It must have been my fault. He shamelessly snuggled up to me again, resting his chin on my shoulder like a spoiled child. What do I have to do for you to forgive me, honey? Perfect. Here was my chance. I was going to humiliate him. I raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in my eyes. Oh, then do what you did before. Kneel. Would he actually kneel for me? No way. We'd be lucky if we didn't end up in another fight. Just then, the pop-up comments went wild again. Ooh, is it reward time already? His honey probably still thinks making him kneel is a punishment. I won't say who's getting excited right now. Lol. Honey thinks he's humiliating him. But little does he know, a certain someone has been secretly fantasizing about this. I'll bet you $5 this guy has been dying to kneel. He was just waiting for his honey to ask. The comments sent a chill down my spine. Who could be that twisted? The next second, before I could even react, James was kneeling between my legs. I stared at him in shock, my mind reeling. No way. Honey, I shouldn't have made you angry. He looked completely repentant as he placed his hands on my legs and began to gently stroke them. I flinched back in terror. Mom, there's a ghost. He moved closer, resting his chin on my lap with a smile on his face. Honey, I'm your dog. Please forgive your little puppy. Okay? Honey, his Adam's apple bobbed as he pressed against my knee, his palm sliding up the line of my thigh. I was wrong. The hair all over my body stood on end. I grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at him. You son of a... He caught the pillow and hugged it, deliberately rubbing his face against it. It smells just like honey. James. I kicked at his shoulder, trying to push him away, but he seized the opportunity to grab my ankle. The psycho actually bowed his head and kissed the top of my foot. When he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with devotion. Woof. I was speechless. He was so damn weird. Did he really have to take the act this far? I took a deep breath to calm myself. I had to hand it to him, he was a real trooper for not breaking character. But I had one more trick up my sleeve. Something he would absolutely, positively never do. I cleared my throat and said sternly, since you say you're my dog, then, puppy, I can forgive you. What should I do, honey? He asked, his hand still stroking my ankle. I tried to pull away, but his grip was too tight. I gave up resisting, rolled my eyes at him, and commanded, don't call me honey. Call me master. Yes, master, he replied instantly, the corners of his mouth twitching, unable to suppress a grin. He agreed that easily. I narrowed my eyes, leaned back lazily against the sofa, and lightly tapped my own lips with a fingertip. I drew out my words. Puppy, come here. I paused for 2 deliberate seconds. Kiss me. The comments exploded. If he were a real dog, his tail would be wagging up a storm right now. Things are finally looking up. If it weren't for all those misunderstandings, they would have been together ages ago. It's not easy loving his honey from afar for so long. Yeah, back then, he really did have a high fever and was so dizzy he left a question blank on the test. No idea how that turned into the rumor that he let his honey get first place on purpose. Even the line first place is no big deal. I just let him have it for fun. Was a rumor started by someone with an agenda. He went to confront the guy, but then his honey showed up and beat him up. So tragic. Huh? The comments left me a little stunned. Had I misunderstood him all this time? But that didn't matter now. I watched as James slowly leaned in, his heavy breathing on my face, his eyes tinged with red. He looked extremely excited. I quickly covered my mouth with my hand. His eyes never left mine as he gently pressed his lips to the back of my hand, a wave of warmth spreading through me. The hair on my arms instantly stood up again. He raised a hand, pulled mine away from my mouth, and, ignoring my resistance, laced his fingers with mine, pressing our joined hands against his chest. He leaned down and pressed his lips to mine. The soft touch was impossible to ignore. My lips grew numb as he kissed me. At that moment, only one thought ran through my head. Damn it, I think I've taken this too far. I made a split-second decision and bit him. He pulled back with a yelp of pain. His eyes were full of hurt. Honey, why did you bite me? He complained. Then a thought seemed to strike him, and his eyes lit up with a shy look. Actually, I'd prefer it if you bit me at night. My face flushed, and I slapped him. Shameless. Shut up. He cupped his cheek, a roguish look on his face. A slap is affection. A scolding is love. Honey, you love me so much. Wait, how did I never know he was like this? I ignored him, calmed myself down, and decided to expose him. James, stop acting. I know you don't have amnesia. What are you trying to pull? He pretended not to understand and hugged me. Honey, I really do have amnesia. I don't recognize anyone but you now. He buried his face in my chest, one hand on his forehead. Ooh, my head is so dizzy. If you throw me out, I'll have to live on the streets. I'll just ask everyone I see, have you seen my honey? My honey doesn't want me anymore. Shut up, I snapped. He paused for a moment, then continued, honey, let's go shopping. I want to buy matching toothbrushes, matching slippers, matching towels. Somehow I ended up at the mall with him. I also realized the pop-up comments followed James. I could only see them when he was around. Putting that aside for a moment, I stared at the mountain of shopping bags in the living room and fell silent. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Honey, what do you want to eat? I can cook anything. I was numb to it all, and so we started living together. He cooked every day, woke me up, cleaned the house, and I got to watch the hilarious pop-up comments. I have to admit, if I was going to die soon, living like this was actually pretty great. Except for the nightly routine where he'd try to climb into my bed. I'd kick him onto the floor, he'd complain and steal a kiss, and then obediently sleep on the floor. I tried to make him sleep in the guest room, but he flat out refused. So I had to compromise and let him make a pallet on my bedroom floor. One day, just after breakfast, the doorbell rang. I told James to do the dishes while I got the door. When I opened it, I was met with my father's icy glare. He walked straight to the sofa and sat down, immediately launching into a lecture. Why haven't you been going to work lately? I closed the door, unconcerned. I didn't feel like it. I only had a few days left to live anyway. Why bother with that stupid job? What are you doing staying at home? Rotting away? He roared, slamming his hand on the glass coffee table, making the cups rattle. He raised his hand and pointed. Look at James. He's the same age as you and he's already taken over his family's company. I have to suck up to him when I see him, and you? You're nothing. Forget other people, just look at your brother. He gets first place on every test. Not like you. All you do is embarrass me in front of everyone. Every single time. Every time he was displeased, he'd compare me to someone else. He could at least pretend to care about me. Whatever. It's not like I needed it anymore. I let out a bitter laugh. You're right. I'm useless. I'm just rotting away. I can't compare to anyone else. And I can't compare to I paused. My mother has been dead for 7 years. But the son my stepmother gave you is already 13. He pointed a finger at me, so angry he was speechless. Suddenly, there was a crash from the kitchen. My father's face darkened. Who is the trash you're hanging out with now? I'm sorry, sir. Did this piece of trash disturb you? James walked out of the kitchen, wearing a little yellow duck apron, a smile playing on his lips. Seeing James, my father's expression instantly changed from stormy to sunny. He went to clap him on the shoulder, but James took a step back, and my father's hand met empty air. My dad laughed awkwardly. Oh, it's you, Mr. Hall. I had no idea. Haha. James smiled faintly. You're too kind, sir. But you haven't answered my question. Oh, you must have misunderstood. I was just telling Jay not to hang around with a bad crowd. I wasn't talking about you. Right, Jay? He shot me a look. I rolled my eyes and said dismissively, yeah, whatever. Maybe James could tell I was in a bad mood. He asked politely, sir, what brings you here? My dad slapped his forehead. Oh dear, I'm getting old. I almost forgot the important stuff. He glanced at me, his authoritative tone returning. Go to work tomorrow. There's a project you need to negotiate. Don't be late. This project is very important. Then his face broke into a smile again. He looked at the apron James was wearing and said, well, James, I didn't realize you and our Jay were such good friends. Jay can be a handful, so please feel free to guide him. James just smiled and said nothing. Seeing he wasn't getting a response, my dad didn't press his luck and left. James closed the door and came back. I crossed my arms and asked, so, Mr. Hall, has your memory returned? To my surprise, he threw his arms around me. That was so scary, honey. He looked up, seeking praise. How was my acting? I think I scared your dad off. Still acting. But anyway, seeing my dad get put in his place made me pretty happy. I sat on the sofa, and James sat beside me, lacing his fingers with mine. Honey, does your dad always talk to you like that? Pretty much. Ever since my mom died, he's become more and more infatuated with his new wife and his younger son, finding fault with everything I do. No matter how unreasonable his younger son was, he'd always make excuses, saying, "He's just a kid, you should be the bigger person." But if I said one thing he didn't like, he'd yell at me, calling me ungrateful, calling me a disgrace. I laughed self-deprecatingly. I'm used to it. He suddenly pulled me into his arms. My nose bumped against his chest, and I caught the faint scent of oranges. He'd been secretly using my body wash. Even though I bought him a new one, I was about to argue with him when he spoke. Honey, I will never, ever talk to you like that. He kissed the top of my head, his voice slightly muffled. You've suffered so much, honey. When we get married, I'll treat you right and make sure you're always happy. My heart started beating a little faster for some reason. It must be because my dad pissed me off. Yes, that's it. Pushed him away. Don't get ahead of yourself. Marriage? Maybe in your next life. Mr. Brooke, you seem like a talented man. It's a waste for you to be just a junior employee. I was in a meeting with the head of the project, and when he said that, I thought a prize horse, had finally met my discerning judge. But then his words took a weird turn. If you came to work for me, I'm sure you'd have a great future. I'll sign off on this project. How about you come work for me? I guarantee your compensation won't be any less than what you're getting now. I was actually considering it. My dad didn't think much of me anyway, and the company wasn't necessarily going to be mine. Seeing me thinking, he reached out to touch my hand. I quickly dodged him and frowned. What are you doing? When he saw I wasn't cooperating, he dropped the act. Mr. Brooke's last name is also Brooke. You didn't get into the Brooke Corporation through the back door, did you? I wonder which back door was that, he said with a lecherous grin. It hit me instantly. Damn it. I thought you were a talent scout, but you just think I'm a prostitute. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. I really didn't want to hit him. I didn't want to screw up this project. But he was so disgusting. I stood up and walked toward him. He smiled, thrilled. You've made up your mind? The next second, I dumped my coffee all over his face, grabbed his tie, and slammed his head onto the table. He struggled, his fists hitting my face. He kept yelling, "You just wait. This project is dead because of you. You piece of trash who got in through the back door. Who are you trying to impress?" I was about to smash his temple when my hand was suddenly grabbed. It was James, dressed in a suit and tie, with his familiar assistant, Lynn, behind him. Don't hit him. You'll dirty your hands, James said, his thumb stroking the back of my hand reassuringly. James grabbed the man by the collar, forcing him to look up. The man's pupils dilated when he saw him, and he stammered with a sycophantic smile, Mr. Hall. You're here for tea too. Lynn spoke up. Mr. Hall, their company has 2 ongoing projects with us. James waved his hand dismissively, his tone cold. Cancel them. The man started to panic, trying to flatter him. Please, Mr. Hall, I was just joking with Mr. Brooke. Was it a funny joke? James asked, his face expressionless, his eyes like ice. James the dog is seriously pissed. He was treated like an enemy for years and never let his honey get this hurt. Exactly. Except for that one time they first fought, he never laid a heavy hand on him. And now this loser hit him. James, just cripple this guy. All that martial arts training can't be just for show. I stared at the comments, lost in thought. James knew martial arts? A sharp crack pulled me back to reality. The man screamed, cold sweat beading on his forehead. James had broken his wrist. He writhed on the floor in pain, muttering, "It's over, it's all over." From what I knew, his company was newly established but had quickly found its footing by landing 2 major projects with James's corporation. That was why my own father wanted to work with them. This project manager was in deep, deep trouble. My mood suddenly improved. I sat down leisurely on the sofa, waiting for James to come up with an excuse. Honey, "I think I was possessed by a ghost just now," he said, walking over to me with a guilty smile. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lynn covering his face. I was speechless. "All right, James, stop acting. I've known you weren't faking your amnesia for a while now. Whatever your reason was for pretending, this farce needs to end." Even if he liked me, as the comments suggested. I stood up and gave him a casual wave. "Thanks for today. Goodbye." Returning to my empty apartment felt strange. But it was nothing I wasn't used to. My freshman year of high school, my father's mistress brought her 6-year-old son to our house to taunt my mother. My mom had a weak heart. The shock triggered a heart attack, and those two just stood there and watched her die without calling an ambulance. The year after my mom died, my dad couldn't wait to marry her. My dad was always bragging to me about how his second-grade son got first place in his class every time. I was so sick of it. What was the big deal about being number one? So, on a whim, I studied hard for 2 weeks and got first place myself. A second grader's first place was nothing compared to a high school sophomore's. He was ecstatic, telling everyone I'd gotten first. But then he was brutally humiliated, because everyone had heard that my first place had been handed to me. I had made him lose face. He came home and screamed at me, saying I was nothing compared to others, that he'd be content if I were just half as reassuring as my brother. So I turned around and beat up that so-called brother. No real reason. I was just bored and wanted to hit someone. I applied for dorm housing that night and have barely been back to that house since. I was used to living alone. It wasn't a big deal. It was just seeing the dessert he made me in the fridge that annoyed me, so I threw it out. Seeing the matching toothbrushes when I went to brush my teeth annoyed me, so I threw them out. Seeing his makeshift bed still on the floor when I went to sleep annoyed me, too, so I kicked it apart. I lay on my bed, staring blankly, my head a little dizzy, my chest a little sore. I remembered, oh, I have cancer. I'm dying. The symptoms are finally starting to show. In the empty room, there was only the sound of my own voice. The next morning, I was woken up by my phone buzzing. My senior year friend, Alex, sent me a message telling me to check the senior year group chat. Right, I still needed to deal with Alex. He was the one who lied and told me James had amnesia. I opened the chat. To sum it up, it had been a long time, and everyone was getting together this Saturday. I was in the same class as James in senior year, which meant he would probably be at this reunion too. But he was the great Mr. Hall, a very busy man, so the chances of him going were probably slim. I thought about it and decided to go. I didn't have much time left, so I shouldn't leave myself with any regrets. Speaking of which, it was a funny coincidence. After our fight in sophomore year, I thought I'd never have anything to do with him again. But then we ended up in the same class in senior year. Even more ridiculously, the teacher assigned seats based on grades, and we became deskmates. I was such a jerk, blocking his way every day. "If you want to get out, you have to beg me." He'd get so angry his ears would turn red, but he'd still reluctantly mumble, "I'm begging you." It was like that every time, and I had the time of my life. Even more absurdly, we ended up at the same university in the same major. Luckily, we weren't in the same dorm, or we would have been fighting every day. But he definitely couldn't beat me. In high school, after that one time in sophomore year, he never won a single fight against me again. Thinking about it now made me a little sad. If James really did like me, that was just too bad. On Saturday, I arrived at the reunion on time. As soon as I got to the door, I saw Alex waving at me, a huge grin on his face. "I missed you so much, man. It's been forever." I rolled my eyes at him. "I haven't settled the score with you yet. It's not my fault someone's so clueless," Alex muttered under his breath. A table was already full of people. I scanned the room, but James wasn't there. Back in the day, James was our class heartthrob. He got piles of love letters and gifts every day. Somehow, the conversation had turned to James. It was true. James was handsome and got good grades. He was just a little cold and was never close to anyone. And now he's Mr. Hall, a total success story. Yep, a typical round of compliments, even though he wasn't here. By the way, Jay, did James confess to you after graduation? Being suddenly called out, my mind went blank for a second. What confession? I looked at the classmate whose name was a little fuzzy. James was planning to confess to you after graduation. You didn't know? She looked around the table. We all knew. Everyone around her nodded in agreement. I was even more confused. Don't you guys know we were sworn enemies? She covered her mouth and laughed. What enemies? No one in our class was as close as you two. You were even flirting just to get to your seats. Flirting? They thought my provocations were flirting. I chose my words carefully. How did you know James liked me and was going to confess? James said so himself. Someone confessed to him, and he told them he liked his deskmate and was planning to confess after graduation. Then she added, and it was James who suggested to the homeroom teacher that seats be assigned by grades, just so he could be your deskmate. And if I'm not mistaken, he also chose the same university as you on purpose. I was completely stunned. James had liked me for that long? Now you see why I said you were clueless, Alex said, sliding into the seat next to me. I felt a surge of anger for some reason. Then why didn't he just tell me he liked me sooner? Did he not have a mouth? You know this, but back then you really treated him like an enemy. Think about it. Did James ask you out during summer break? And when you didn't show, did he come looking for you? He did ask me out that summer. He sent me a message saying he wanted to talk to me about something. I thought he wanted to fight. It was too hot, and I didn't want to go out, so I blew him off. Later, he came to my house, but I didn't want to be there, so I spent the whole summer at my grandma's place in the countryside. The chatter around me was a constant buzz. I snapped back to reality as someone entered the room. It was James. He glanced at me and was about to speak when a group of classmates swarmed him. He was ushered to the head of the table. I took advantage of the chaos, grabbed a bottle of beer, and slipped outside. I sat on the outdoor terrace. I don't know if it was the alcohol or the cancer, but I felt dizzy, and my whole body ached. Just as I set the bottle down, I heard James's voice. Honey, what are you doing out here? Suddenly, I felt a sense of release. I draped my arm over the back of the chair and asked playfully, It's not amnesia time right now. Isn't it awkward to call me honey? He shook his head and sat down across from me. I'm sorry for lying about the amnesia. I waved my hand with a smile. It's fine. I knew you were lying. His eyes lit up. Does that mean you like me a little bit, too? I lowered my gaze. You're overthinking it. Jay, I really do like you. From the first moment I saw you. I like you now, and I'll keep liking you forever. He said it with such urgency. But my head was spinning too much to listen to sweet nothings. The ache in my body was a constant reminder. You're dying. All right, James. Go like someone else. I've had too much to drink. I'm going home. When I got home, I lay on the bed and let my mind go blank. I drifted off to sleep without realizing it. In a haze, I heard someone calling my name, asking where the fever medicine was. I mumbled the word drawer, and at the same time, another thought flickered through my mind. But I was too dizzy to catch it before it was gone. When I woke up again, I felt sticky, but my head wasn't dizzy anymore, and I felt much more energetic. I was about to get up and take a shower when I saw James sitting by my bed. His eyes were bloodshot and his face was gaunt, as if he hadn't slept all night. He was clutching a piece of paper in his hand. I remembered last night's thought. My diagnosis report was in the medicine drawer. I was hesitating, trying to figure out how to tell him. His hands trembled as he asked me with a grief-stricken face, This is fake, right? I fell silent. He pulled me into a fierce hug, his voice trembling. Jay, we'll get treatment. I'll make sure you get better. Tears soaked my shoulder. I patted his back and tried to comfort him with a smile. It's okay. I don't have a mom, and my dad doesn't love me. My life was never worth much anyway. But you're a treasure to me, he retorted. My shoulder grew wetter. I can't stand it when people cry. I told him, I'll tell you a secret if you stop crying. Okay? I thought I could say it easily. I never expected to be so nervous. Over the sound of my own pounding heart, I heard myself say, Actually, I think I might like you a little, too. My body was suddenly lifted into the air. James picked me up, his voice hoarse. We're going to the hospital right now. Taking advantage of my illness, I suddenly felt bold. James, if there's a next life, I'll definitely be with you. With that, I pressed my lips firmly against his. But he suddenly dodged. We have to go to the hospital first. They can definitely cure you. So annoying. At the hospital, I was immediately scheduled for a full body checkup. Waiting for the results was agonizing. James anxiously held my hand, our fingers intertwined. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitantly answered. A gentle, sweet female voice came through. Is this Mr. J. Brooke? This is XX Hospital. Regarding your recent checkup, due to a computer bug and our own error, your diagnostic results were switched with another patient's. You do not have cancer. You are perfectly healthy. On behalf of the hospital, I couldn't hear the rest of what she said. An overwhelming sense of excitement flooded me. I'm not sick, I'm not sick, I'm not sick. I discreetly pulled my hand out of his. He looked at me, his face haggard. Honey, what's wrong? Seeing him like that, I felt a pang of guilt and was about to tell him the truth. Just then, the doctor came over with the results. James shot up. How is he, doctor? Can he be cured? Money is no object. The doctor smiled kindly. Don't worry, he was cut off. How can I not worry? I need my honey to live. The doctor tried again. He's actually fine. He was cut off again. Doctor, don't try to comfort me. This late-stage cancer, how can he be fine? What do we do? You have to save my honey. I couldn't watch anymore. It was getting embarrassing. I tugged on his sleeve and said, I'm actually not sick. You had a high fever yesterday, you were so weak. How can you not be sick? Because your honey just has a cold and a fever, the doctor replied, still smiling, as if he'd seen this kind of scene a million times. James said, a little stunned. His tears stopped. My honey is really okay? The doctor handed him the report. Go home. Everything is normal. James stared at the report the entire way home. By the time we walked in the door, he was still in a daze. I took the paper from his hand and lifted his chin. Am I not better to look at than a piece of paper, He didn't say a word. He just kissed me deeply. We kissed from the front door to the sofa, and from the sofa to the bed. I lay beneath him as James looked down at me. Honey, I love you so much. I bet 10 packs of spicy chips they're definitely doing it tonight. 6 years of pining in secret, finally a happy ending. And all that breakfast James brought him for 4 years of college wasn't for nothing. The comments were still popping up, but the text was getting fainter. Until it disappeared completely. The comments were gone, but they had solved a long-standing mystery for me. For 4 whole years, someone had brought me breakfast without missing a single day, but I never found out who it was until graduation. It was James. I chuckled. James, you're like a lost little puppy. Honey, I have a master. You're my master. I stroked his head. Good boy. Woof. Epilogue. First place is no big deal. I just let him have it for fun. I have no idea how that rumor started. So annoying. I found the source of the quote. I recognized the guy. I'd beaten him up a few days ago for shaking down elementary school kids for protection money. Why did you spread that rumor?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was holding a grudge and wanted to ruin your reputation. I frowned, about to warn him not to cause any more trouble. But then someone grabbed me and said, You think you're so great, don't you? First of all, I had never thought that. Second, before I could even react, I got punched in the face. I was already annoyed, and without even getting a good look at him, I started fighting back. It was only when he was threatening me that I got a real look at his face. His eyes were so round when he glared at me, so cute, and the way he talked was so fiery. I loved it. That was what I thought at that moment. I asked him, You're the one who got first place? He's so brilliant, as expected of the person I like. But then he got angry for some reason. He was even cuter when he was angry. I felt like such a pervert. I'm a complete psycho. I cursed at myself in disgust. Afraid my unhinged state would scare him, I hurried away. After I got back to class, I did a little digging on my honey. I am so in love. You should just pretend to have amnesia. You know Jay has always seen you as his nemesis. You two will never get together if things keep going like this. Alex was chattering on. He was the first person to find out I liked Jay. He said I needed to be nicer to Jay, to let him know how I felt. So, when he was stuck on a problem, I tried to help him. But he said, "Who are you looking down on? You think you're the only one who knows this stuff? Get lost. Just seeing you annoys me." It was also Alex's idea for me to bring him breakfast every day. He said, "Do it for 6 months and Jay will slowly get the hint." I did it for 4 years and he still had no idea. And he never went home for the holidays, so I didn't either. I just stayed with him, going wherever he went. But he just yelled at me, "Are you crazy? Are you a stalker?" Even though, looking back, Alex's advice was pretty unreliable, I still thought his amnesia suggestion was a good one. I just never expected I'd end up living with my honey so smoothly. Watch me work my magic.